Kenichi Yamada takes off his headset and complains about his current video game ending its service after only 3 years. He drinks from an energy pouch and calls the game hot garbage with weak balancing. He wants a hardcore game that takes at least 10 years to beat. He searches the internet for a game with garbage balancing and hardcore mechanics. He finds a game offering an endless experience in a fantasy world of swords and magic. He checks the difficulty settings and skips past easy and normal. He selects the Hell mode difficulty. The game warns him that leveling up requires 100 times more experience points than normal mode. He accepts the challenge and looks at the character classes. He skips over standard classes like swordsman and spear user. He notices he can even choose to play as a demon lord. He sees the summoner class has an 8-star difficulty rating. The game informs him that the summoner class defaults to the serf social status. He finds this restriction fun and decides to act as a guinea pig since the class is still in alpha testing. He clicks yes to start the game. His computer monitors flash with bright light and he vanishes from his room. His consciousness travels through a dark, ethereal space filled with rising bubbles. He feels relaxed until the space suddenly becomes very tight. A baby cries inside a stone cottage. A woman lies in bed with her newborn baby while a man praises her for doing an amazing job. Kenichi realizes he just reincarnated as the baby. The man holds him and decides to name him Alan. Alan realizes he kept all his past memories and understands the Japanese language perfectly. He eats orange food from a wooden spoon. His mother, Teresia, feeds him while his father, Rodin, watches them happily. Alan notes that his family belongs to the serf class. He lives in a frontier village where pioneers pay taxes to a ruling lord to cultivate the land. Rodin eats a piece of bread, and Alan guesses his father is around 20 years old. Teresia wipes Alan's face, and he guesses she is in her late teens. He figures he will get siblings soon. Alan yawns, and Teresia puts him to bed. Rodin and Teresia stay up to eat dinner. Alan waits for them to leave the room. He tries to open his stat window but fails. He tries again, and a large black book materializes in the air. The book emits a bright blue light. Rodin and Teresia rush into the room to check on him. Alan quickly hides the book. Teresia assumes he was just talking in his sleep and leaves the room. Alan summons the book again and it opens. He checks his stats and sees he is a level 1 summoner. His health is 4, his magic points are 2, his attack is 1, his endurance is 1, his agility is 2, his intelligence is 3, and his luck is 2. His active skills are summon and create. He needs 1,000 experience points to level up. He checks his available summons and sees he can only create rank H insects and beasts. He finds a letter inside the book from Elmea, the god of creation. The god apologizes for delivering the grimoire late because the summoner class is still in testing. The god refuses to accept any cancellations regarding his class selection. Alan ignores the letter and tries to summon an insect. He shouts for a bug to appear, but nothing happens. He realizes he has to use his create skill first. He uses the book to create a rank H insect card. The card gives him 1 extra endurance point and 1 extra agility point. He decides to wait until tomorrow to actually summon the bug. He falls asleep and the book vanishes. The next day, Rodin chops down a tree in the forest while Teresia washes clothes in a wooden tub. Alan stays inside the house and opens his grimoire. He commands the insect card to activate. Bright blue electricity crackles from the book and a blinding white light fills the room. Glowing blue orbs float around Alan as a giant green grasshopper appears on the floor. Alan stares at the huge bug and tries to command it. The bug does nothing. Alan checks the book for more information and names the grasshopper Denka. He sees the bug gives him permanent stat buffs just by existing in his inventory. He gets excited about his increased stats and cheers loudly. Teresia hears him and checks the room. She sees the giant bug and screams in terror. She steps on the grasshopper and kills it. Several days pass and Alan tests his skills more. He creates a rank H beast card and summons a white mouse. He names the mouse Mousy. He notices the mouse is just as dumb as the grasshopper but learns his summons will use their special abilities when commanded. He realizes he cannot fight real monsters with these weak summons. He discovers he can hold up to 10 summon cards of each type. He stocks up on beast cards to stack their buffs. The 10 cards increase his attack stat by 10 points. He becomes much stronger than a normal baby, but complains about the massive amount of experience points needed to level up in Hell mode. Later, Rodin comes home covered in blood. Teresia panics, but Rodin explains it is just monster blood from a hunt. He carries a spear and tells Alan he killed a great boar. Alan wants to see it, so Rodin puts Alan on his shoulders and walks outside. Alan looks at the vast farmland and distant mountains for the first time. Rodin points at a flock of birds in the sky called alba herons. He explains the birds signal the start of autumn. He tells Alan he named him after the Alba Heron because they fly freely and he wants Alan to have true freedom. He admits Teresia got mad at him for naming their son after a monster. They reach a clearing in the forest where several men are butchering a massive wild boar. Rodin introduces Alan to their neighbor, Gerda. Gerda mentions his own daughter Krina is the same age as Alan but acts much wilder. Alan asks Gerda about the boar. Gerda explains the great boar is a rank C monster and it takes 20 men to kill one. Alan uses this fact to calculate the power levels of monsters in this world. 10 months pass and Alan turns 1 year and 10 months old. He checks his grimoire and sees he finally reached level 2 for his summon and create skills. He unlocks expansion level 1 and a new notes feature. He also unlocks the fuse skill and can now create rank G summons. His card inventory space doubles and he gets excited about getting double the stat buffs. He opens his notes feature and tries to fuse 2 mouse cards together. The book says he does not have enough magic points. He gets confused because his magic points are full. He tries to create a rank G beast instead, but the book again says he lacks the magic points. He falls backward in frustration and blames the garbage balancing of hell mode. He waits until he turns 3 years old to gain enough stats to use his fuse skill. He stands outside the house and fuses a grasshopper card with a mole card. The book flashes with blue light and a blue bird appears. He names the bird Chappie. He checks the bird stats and sees it gives him extra agility and intelligence. The bird has a voice mimicry ability and copies Alan's voice perfectly. Alan realizes this is great for tricking enemies. He summons his other rank G creatures. He calls out Hopper the frog and Molly the mole. He commands Hopper to use provoke and Molly to use dig. The mole digs a deep hole in the ground. Alan plans to use the holes as pitfall traps. He marvels at the deep mechanics of the summoner class and declares he will dominate the game with stat buffs. Alan plays with Krina outside and they use wooden swords to fight. Krina attacks him relentlessly and Alan tries to defend himself. He wonders how she moves so fast because he put all his stat buffs into agility but still struggles to match her speed. Krina lunges forward and swings her sword. She completely shatters Alan's wooden sword into splinters. Alan falls to the ground in shock and realizes Krina is incredibly overpowered. Krina runs off and says goodbye. Rodin and Teresia walk over carrying baskets full of harvested potatoes. Teresia has a very large pregnant belly. Alan offers to carry the heavy baskets for them because he knows he has the stamina of a full-grown adult. Rodin refuses to let him work and tells Alan to enjoy playing while he can. During dinner, Rodin explains that working the farms is extremely grueling labor. He says serfs are stuck in this life forever, and he does not want his 3-year-old son to suffer yet. Rodin asks Alan why he throws rocks at the trees in the backyard. Alan lies and says he wants to protect Teresia from monsters. In reality, Alan just wants to test if he can learn new combat skills outside of his class. Rodin calls him a brave boy. Teresia mentions the appraisal ceremony. She explains that every 5-year-old child undergoes a divine ceremony to determine their talent. She hopes Alan gets a strong talent so he can break out of serfdom. Alan listens closely to this new information. Winter arrives and covers the village in deep snow. Alan leaves Denka the grasshopper in a crater outside and discovers his summons can stay active all day without draining his magic points. He spars with Krina again, and she swings her wooden mallet to knock Alan flat into the snow. Teresia walks outside to greet them. Denka suddenly jumps out of the snow and clings to Teresia's bandaged leg. Teresia screams in terror, and the shock instantly triggers her labor. Rodin rushes out and catches her. He yells at Krina to go get her mother Matilda. Krina runs through the snowy forest with her mallet. Rodin carries Teresia into the house and places her on the bed. Teresia cries out in immense pain. Rodin panics and has no idea what to do next. Alan crouches next to the pottery kiln and blows through a wooden tube to start a fire. He regrets not playing a birthing simulator game. Matilda and Gerda arrive at the house. Matilda orders all the men to leave the room. Rodin, Gerda, and Alan go outside and huddle under thick yellow blankets against the stone wall of the house. They wait in the freezing cold all night until morning arrives. The sun rises over the mountains and Rodin rushes back inside the house. Matilda holds a newborn baby. Rodin cheers and praises his wife. They check the baby and see it is a boy with blonde hair and green eyes. Teresia asks Rodin to name him. Rodin names the baby Mash. Teresia warns him not to use another monster name. Rodin nervously laughs and avoids answering. Alan watches his family smile and laugh together. He thinks about his old life as a broke and lonely gamer and realizes he actually enjoys having a family. He vows to hoard the best equipment and max out all his stats. He plans to use his overwhelming power to free his entire family from the drudgery of serfdom forever. Alan and his father Rodan walk down a dirt path through a vast field of yellow crops. They wear simple tunics and enjoy the clear blue sky above them. Their neighbor Gerda walks beside them with his daughter Krenna resting happily on his shoulders. Alan asks his father about the upcoming appraisal ceremony. Rodin explains that the ceremony is a special event required for everyone in the kingdom. He tells Alan that every child must participate when they turn 5 years old. He adds that discovering a strong talent can allow a serf to rise up and become a noble. Alan realizes this is a massive opportunity to escape his life of poverty. Rodin mentions that Alan will have a lot of rivals this year. He explains that the village experienced a massive population boom after it was first settled. Krenna enthusiastically states that she wants to get the swordswoman talent so she can become a knight. Gerda laughs loudly and wishes his daughter good luck. The group eventually arrives at the commoner village. Alan looks around in amazement at the large stone buildings and the bustling streets. He notices that the commoners are dressed much better than his family. A few commoners stare at Alan and point out his dark hair and dark eyes. They whisper about him being a lowly serf. Alan hears their insults but decides to ignore them. He states that he does not care about their opinions. The villagers gather in a wide dirt plaza in front of a massive brick church. The church features twin towers topped with green conical roofs. Large wooden double doors open to reveal 3 officials standing in the dark interior. The officials wear white and purple hooded robes. The head official addresses the crowd and talks about Elmea, the god of creation. He claims that the god blesses everyone equally with great opportunities. He shares stories about legendary heroes who originally came from serfdom. He specifically mentions Clases the Saintess and Diverg the Sword Lord. Alan remembers seeing those exact classes during his character creation screen. He realizes that the game developers applied their configurations to this entire world. He gets incredibly excited to finally receive his summoner class. The officials invite the 5-year-olds inside the cathedral. The group enters a grand hall filled with wooden pews and tall stone pillars. They stand before a large altar decorated with pink flowers and candles. A glowing blue crystal ball rests on a wooden pedestal in the center of the room. A massive black slab stands behind the pedestal to display the appraisal results. The official announces the start of the ceremony and calls the village chieftain Deboji forward. Deboji steps up with his young son Palomas. The official instructs Palomas to place his hand on the crystal ball. He explains that the orb will reveal his talents and attributes on the metal plate behind them. Palomas nervously steps up to the pedestal and closes his eyes. He places his hand on the glowing blue orb. Magical text immediately scrolls up the black slab. The text reveals his character stats and assigns him letter ranks. The slab declares that Palomas has the talent to be a merchant. Deboji screams with joy and hugs his son tightly. He thanks the heavens for the wonderful news. Alan watches the process and notes that the attributes are displayed with ranks instead of numbers. He appreciates the game design because no one else can see his personal grimoire. Next, a young boy named Dagora steps up to the pedestal. Dagora wears an orange vest and a headband. He touches the large crystal ball and bathes the room in a bright purple light. The black tablet displays his results and reveals he has the axe user talent. Dagora pumps his fist in the air and kicks his leg in celebration. His father cheers loudly and praises his son. The official points out that Dagora received an A rank in attack power. Alan figures that people cannot get higher ranks without possessing a specific talent. The official continues the ceremony and evaluates the rest of the children. Some kids receive talents while others receive nothing. Eventually, the official calls Krenna to the front. Krenna runs across the checkered floor with pure enthusiasm. She reaches out and touches the glowing blue orb. The crystal instantly emits blinding horizontal beams of blue light. The intense light completely engulfs her father Gerda and the surrounding officials. Everyone stares in absolute shock. The official sweats profusely and calls the event a miracle. He announces that Krenna possesses the Sword Lord talent. Gerda completely loses his mind with excitement. He picks Krenna up and repeatedly chants her new title. Krenna looks confused and complains that she wanted to be a swordswoman. Alan smiles and realizes this explains her overpowered strength. He knows she always trampled him during their play fights. Finally, the official calls Alan to the pedestal. Rodin encourages his son to step forward. Alan walks up with a determined expression. He fully expects his parents to finally learn that he is a summoner. He places his hand on the large blue orb. The crystal emits brilliant rays of cyan light. Suddenly, the light completely vanishes. Alan falls backward onto the dark floor and grimaces in pain. Rodin rushes over and helps him sit up. Alan brushes off the fall and eagerly asks for his talent. The official looks at the black slate and hesitates. Rodin asks him to read the results out loud because he cannot read. The official looks incredibly nervous and finally admits that Alan has no talent. Alan screams in shock and stares at the glowing device. The slate shows that all his stats are E rank. His talent section displays a jumbled mess of glitched Japanese text. Alan curses the useless developers for failing to debug the game. He realizes that no one will ever know he is a summoner. Rodin gently guides a disappointed Alan out of the church. They walk back down the dirt path to their humble stone cottage. Alan's mother Teresia waits outside with his baby brother Mash. Rodin and Teresia hug Alan and assure him that talents do not matter. They tell him he will always be their pride and joy. The family sits together by a small fire on the dirt floor of their home. Alan feels incredibly happy to be born into such a supportive family despite their extreme poverty. Later that night, Alan lies on a futon next to his sleeping brother. He summons his black grimoire and watches the glowing blue cards float above his head. He thinks about the ceremony and realizes everyone there was level 1. He deduces that the rank system reflects the expected growth for each level. He remembers selecting the Hell mode difficulty before reincarnating. He knows that Hell mode requires 100 times more experience points to level up. He figures his E rank stats simply represent his heavily restricted growth rate. He laughs at the ridiculous difficulty and vows to put normal games in their place. He gets frustrated by the glitched text but knows he cannot complain to the developers. The next day, the village throws a party to celebrate Krina's new talent. Gerda and his wife host the gathering inside their stone house. The village chieftain gifts them a large yellow jug of celebratory liquor. Rodin and Gerda open the jug and prepare to drink. Krina happily eats a piece of bread and brags to Alan about getting even stronger. Alan acts impressed and pretends he does not know her true power. As the men drink, Gerda suddenly turns aggressive. He yells at Rodin and claims he wants to cut ties with his family. Rodin gets confused and asks for an explanation. Gerda explains that Krina has an extraordinary talent and will likely join the knighthood. He believes she might even become nobility and should not waste her time socializing with lowly serfs. Rodin takes extreme offense to this insult. He grabs Gerda by the collar and yells right in his face. The two men press their foreheads together and scream at each other. Krina asks her mother to make them stop. Gerda's wife steps forward and punches Gerda directly in the face. Teresia grabs Rodin by the cheeks and violently stretches his face. The two men immediately surrender and bow their heads in apology. Gerda's wife laughs and tells Alan that the men have always been hotheads. She explains that the four adults are actually childhood friends. They all moved together 10 years ago to help settle this new village. Rodin and Gerda go outside to drink under the starry night sky. They sit between their identical stone houses and reminisce about the past. Rodin talks about building the support beams, while Gerda brags about building the walls and roofs. They laugh together and enjoy their rare taste of liquor. A few days later, Rodin and Gerda work together in a lush green field. They use long wooden poles to pry a massive tree stump from the ground. Suddenly, they hear a commotion and realize the Order of Knights has arrived. The villagers quickly gather in the sunlit town square to see the knights. Dagora stands in the crowd with a spiked wooden club. He spots Alan and starts mocking him. He calls Alan a talentless loser and a weakling. Krina jumps in front of Alan and yells at Dagora. She tries to bite Dagora's pointing finger to defend her friend. Gerda quickly grabs Krina and pulls her back to stop the fight. A group of knights in red and white armor rides into the square on horseback. The elderly knight captain Xenoph leads the group. He has white hair, a short beard, and a facial scar. The village chieftain greets him warmly. Xenoph immediately demands to see the supposed sword lord. Gerda pushes Krina forward and she confidently introduces herself. Xenoph stares at the tiny girl and refuses to believe she possesses such a legendary talent. He suspects the village chieftain falsified the appraisal results to trick the local baron. He declares that lying about a talent is a crime punishable by death. Gerda drops to his knees and begs for mercy. He explains that his daughter is only 5 years old and has never held a real sword. Xenoph ignores his pleas and orders his vice captain Librand to test the girl in combat. He threatens to execute Krina and her entire family on the spot if she refuses to fight. Alan watches the scene unfold and thinks these people have completely lost their minds. Librand steps forward and draws his large, silver sword. Krina shows absolutely no fear and gladly accepts the challenge. She grabs a massive silver sword that glows with a blue edge. Gerda screams in terror as the knights forcefully restrain him against a wooden structure. The villagers form a large circle around the fighters. Krina boldly declares herself a knight and charges at Librand. Librand holds his sword up to defend himself. Krina leaps high into the air and swings her massive blade downward. The swords clash violently and send bright yellow sparks flying into the air. Leibrand struggles to push back against the tiny girl's overwhelming strength. He realizes she is extremely powerful and starts fighting seriously. He lunges forward with incredible speed and thrusts his sword at her. Krenna easily deflects his rapid attacks and slides firmly across the dirt. She grips her sword tightly and pushes Leibrand back. Leibrand grits his teeth and sweats profusely under the pressure. Krenna suddenly crouches on the ground and unleashes a radiant green aura. Alan recognizes this glowing energy as an extra skill unique to her class. Krenna swings her glowing sword and triggers a massive explosion of yellow light. The sheer force of the blast knocks Leibrand completely off balance. Krenna leaps through the air again and aims her sword right between Leibrand's eyes. Leibrand freezes in place and stares at the blade in pure horror. Xenoph immediately raises his arm and shouts for the duel to end. Krenna stops her attack just in time and happily lowers her weapon. She complains that the fight ended too quickly and thanks Leibrand for the fun match. Leibrand drops to his knees and hangs his head in utter defeat. The surrounding villagers erupt into wild cheers. They celebrate Krenna for completely dominating a fully grown knight. Gerda breaks free from the guards and scoops Krenna into his arms. He cries tears of joy because his daughter survived the deadly ordeal. Xenoph approaches Gerda and formally apologizes for his boorish behavior. He commends Gerda for raising a true sword lord. He then asks to discuss Krenna's future with the group. They all move inside the village chieftain's residence for a large feast. They sit around a long wooden dining table filled with soup, bread, and red fruit. Dagora aggressively stuffs his face with food while Krenna happily munches on a fruit. Xenoph stands up and formally introduces himself to the room. He announces that the local baron has decided to honor Krenna's talent by renaming the settlement to Krenna Village. The chieftain laughs enthusiastically and accepts the decision. Xenoph explains that Krenna can travel to the Royal Academy to study when she turns 12 years old. He adds that she will eventually serve directly under the royal family. Dagora's father asks if his son can also become a knight. Xenoph encourages Dagora to study hard and earn his own admission into the academy. Dagora eagerly agrees and demands that Alan study with him. He calls Alan a dummy who cannot study himself out of a paper bag. Krenna immediately yells back and defends Alan's intelligence. Alan sits quietly and eats his food while the two 5-year-olds bicker over him. Xenoph notices Alan sitting near the table and asks about his dark hair. Roden proudly introduces Alan as his son. Xenoph's eyes widen in surprise, and he asks Roden for his full name. Roden states his name, and Xenoph immediately recognizes him as Roden the Boar Hunter. He bows his head and pays his respects to the local legend. Xenoph explains that the Baron absolutely loves the great boar meat supplied by this village every winter. He praises Rodan for taking on the most dangerous role during those deadly hunts. Rodin blushes and thanks the captain for the incredibly high praise. Alan smiles proudly and thinks his father is a superstar. Later that evening, Roden carries Krenna on his shoulders as they walk through the forest under a golden sunset sky. He tells Alan that Krenna might become a famous hero right out of the storybooks someday. He encourages Alan to keep working hard and to strut his stuff with pride, regardless of his serf status. Alan happily agrees and promises to do his best. He feels deeply motivated to conquer his hell mode playthrough and protect his family. As they reach their house, Roden pulls a small spiky pink slime out of his tattered tunic. He tells Alan he caught the creature as a gift for Teresia and Mash. Alan laughs and pulls 2 identical pink slimes out of his own shirt. Roden smiles brightly and praises his son. They head inside their home to share their gifts and celebrate their happy lives together. Alan checks his status menu and gets super hyped because he finally reaches level 3 for his summon skill. He unlocks the enhance ability and his card inventory jumps from 20 to 30 slots, which means he can equip significantly more stat buffs. He wonders what new creature he can fuse next and hopes for an epic dragon, but he knows he has to run some experiments first. Later that evening, he eats dinner with his pregnant mother Teresia, his father Rodan, and his little brother Mash. His mom talks about the new baby kicking softly, guessing it might be a girl, and reminds Roden that he promised to let her name the baby if it is a daughter. During the meal, Alan notices his magic points fully restore. He accidentally mentions the god of creation Elmea out loud, which shocks his parents since they strictly forbid taking the Lord's name in vain. Alan quickly covers his tracks by pointing out that an old scar on Roden's arm is completely healed. Roden flexes his muscular arm and explains that he experienced a trial of the gods during his boar hunt earlier that day. He describes it as a sudden burst of energy that instantly wipes away all wounds and exhaustion. Alan immediately realizes that this is just a local term for leveling up. He thinks about how his dad must be a super high level from all his hunting experience over the years. Meanwhile, Alan is stuck at level 1 and desperately needs to defeat monsters to gain experience points, but serfs are strictly forbidden from leaving the village unless they are on an official hunt. He begs his dad to let him join the hunters, but Roden sternly refuses and warns him that hunting is incredibly dangerous and frequently costs lives. Later that night, while the rest of the family sleeps, Alan opens his grimoire to check a system notification. He correctly guesses that the game developers finally responded to his toxic complaint tickets and fixed the glitched text on his status screen. He reads the raw data and discovers that his basic stats are locked at E rank because of the brutal hell mode difficulty severely slowing down his growth. However, he is thrilled to see that his magic points and intelligence are rated at S rank, which is absolutely perfect for a summoner build. He decides to test out his brand new enhanced skill on a grasshopper card named Denka. The skill successfully boosts the creature's endurance and agility stats just like he predicted. He summons the glowing green grasshopper into the room and notices it looks much stronger even though its physical size remains exactly the same. He excitedly shows the giant bug to his pregnant mom, but she just gets totally grossed out and yells at him to put it away. Alan unsummons the grasshopper and realizes that the stat enhancements on his cards are completely permanent. He decides to spend his extra magic points to systematically enhance every single card in his inventory. The next morning, Roden heads out for another dangerous boar hunt carrying his spear and a large sack. Alan stays behind to help out by doing the laundry and hanging the clothes on a bamboo line in the backyard. While he works, he continues to diligently experiment with his card fusions. He tries mixing an insect and a beast, then a beast and a bird, but he completely fails to unlock any new monster types. He finally mixes an insect with a bird and successfully creates a brand new grass-type card. He complains about grass being a summonable creature, but his attitude completely changes when he reads the actual stats. The new card provides a massive boost to his magic points and his luck. He checks his menu and sees his maximum magic points increase from 7 to 12. He realizes that having extra magic points will let him perform way more actions every single day, effectively cutting down his grinding time by years. He summons the grass creature and a weird red apple monster with vine limbs pops out onto the dirt. He names the little guy Apo and checks its special ability, which is called Aroma. He commands Apo to use the skill, and the apple monster immediately burrows into the sand until only a single green leaf sticks out. It releases a pink mist that rapidly grows into a fragrant little sapling. Alan feels incredibly disappointed and jokes about becoming a fantasy isekai gardener. Teresia walks out with baby mash and comments on the incredibly nice smell of the new sapling in their yard. Alan frantically tries to unsummon Apo, but the sapling refuses to disappear, leaving him completely confused about its actual combat purpose. Later in the day, Alan violently spars with his pink-haired friend Krina in the backyard using wooden training swords. Krina lunges through the air and completely dominates the fight, easily knocking Alan down onto the desolate sandy ground. Alan grits his teeth in utter frustration because he still cannot beat her, even with his sword mastery skill at level 3 and his newly expanded inventory packed with physical buffs. Krina tells him that he feels a bit tougher, but Alan just wonders if he should use a monster's attack skill to gain an unfair advantage. He remembers that his wolf summon has a deadly bite attack, but he quickly decides that using lethal monster skills on his friends is a terrible idea. Later, Alan stands by a large, hollowed-out tree trunk and forcefully throws small round stones into it to level up his throwing skill. He complains that he has already thrown over 20,000 rocks without a single level up. Mash sits on a dirt path nearby and loudly whines about being bored. Alan realizes that practicing his throwing skill is a total waste of time when he really needs to focus on increasing his summon level. He decides to quit throwing rocks, even though it completely kills his hardcore gamer pride to stop right before a potential level up. He shifts his focus to the small garden of saplings he created with his apple monster. He reveals that he finally figured out the true purpose of the aroma skill. The fragrant saplings actually shorten his magic point recovery time from 6 hours to 5 hours, which gives him even more opportunities to grind his skills every day. However, he still feels like he never has enough time to do everything he wants. That night, a heavy rainstorm severely batters the village. Teresia and Alan wait anxiously in their dimly lit house because Roden is extremely late returning from the hunt. Suddenly, they hear loud shouting outside and rush out into the pouring rain. A group of hunters carries Roden into the house on a wooden stretcher. Roden is completely unconscious and covered in massive purple bruises and a horrifying bloody wound on his chest. The village elder explains that Roden took a massive boar fang straight to the gut. The elder managed to save Roden's life by using a super rare healing herb called a moulerze flower. The elder bought the expensive herb using the gold coins that the Knight Captain previously gave Rodan as an apology. The other hunters in the room are absolutely furious about the situation. Gerda slams his fist against a wooden post and blames a stupid commoner for the disaster. The other hunters shout in agreement and demand to finally put their foot down. Mash starts crying uncontrollably from all the yelling and the terrifying sight of his injured father. Alan gently leads his little brother into the next room to calm him down. After the angry hunters leave, Gerda stays behind to explain the full story to Teresia and Alan. He tells them that the village chieftain suddenly forced the commoners to participate in the dangerous boar hunt because boar meat is highly valuable. Normally, no commoner ever volunteers for a hunt because it is extremely deadly, and only the poor serfs actively risk their lives to make a living. However, the commoners recently heard the Knight Captain publicly praise Rodan as a legendary hunter. They falsely assumed that joining the hunt would be perfectly safe as long as Rodan was there to protect them. Gerda explains that they gave the commoners the absolute easiest job, which was just holding the boar's attention with their spears. But when the massive beast actually charged out of the forest, the commoners completely panicked. They dropped their weapons and totally ruined the hunting formation. Rodan had to jump in to save the fleeing commoners and ended up getting impaled by the beast. Gerda confirms that they still managed to slay the giant boar in the end and promises to bring Rodan his fair share of the meat the next day. Alan feels like a total loser for focusing so much on his personal stats while his father risked his life for the family. He vows to step up and help out more. The next evening, Rodan finally wakes up, completely wrapped in bandages. Gerda arrives with a large bundle of fresh meat wrapped in green leaves and tells Rodan to just focus on resting. He promises that the other hunters will make sure Rodan's family has enough food to easily survive the harsh winter. Rodan sincerely thanks him for the generous help. Alan looks at his injured father and firmly declares that he will take over the hard work and keep the family completely safe. The following day, Alan heads to the village well to gather water. He easily lifts two massive wooden buckets attached to a carrying pole and hauls them across his shoulders. Gerda and the other adults watch in absolute shock as the tiny boy carries the incredibly heavy load without breaking a sweat. Alan realizes that he does not need to hide his strength anymore because Krina is already known as the ultimate prodigy in the village. A talentless serf showing off a little muscle will not draw any unwanted attention. He completely unequips all his magic buffs and pours every single stat boost into his physical strength so he can do heavy labor for his family. He meets up with Gerda in a sunlit field to help harvest potatoes. Gerda tries to teach him the proper two-handed pulling technique, but Alan just casually yanks a massive chain of root vegetables straight out of the dirt with one hand. Gerda laughs and admits that Alan is way stronger than he expected. Alan proudly claims he gets his raw strength directly from his dad. Later, back at the house, a young blonde commoner wearing a green shirt arrives with a basket of fresh red fruit. He bows deeply and sincerely apologizes for panicking during the hunt and nearly getting Rodan killed. Alan immediately recognizes him as the absolute idiot who ruined the formation. Rodan calmly accepts the apology and tells the youth to just be more careful next time. A group of other hunters arrives at the door with more care packages and happily greets Rodan. Alan smiles brightly and feels incredibly proud to have the most forgiving parents in the world. Determined to secure enough food for the winter himself, Alan heads out to a lush field of tall yellow flowers to set traps. He uses his wooden sword to clear a circular patch in the thick vegetation. He summons several hopper frogs and sets up multiple woven baskets propped up by wooden sticks attached to long white cords. He commands the colorful frogs to use their special provoke skill. He hides behind a thick bush and eagerly waits to catch a bunch of wild ducks for his family. He expects the frog magic to easily lure in some basic prey. Instead, a massive white bird with purple wings and a red crest suddenly swoops down from the sky. The giant bird lands right on top of his fragile basket traps and starts aggressively pecking at the frogs. Alan completely panics when he realizes that the creature is an albaheron, a dangerous B-rank monster that he was named after. He knows he should run away immediately, but he checks his status screen and sees that his enhanced skill is now at level 2. This means he can boost his creature stats by 20 points instead of 10, and he already enhanced his entire inventory. He decides to act like a true hardcore gamer and fight the monster head-on to provide for his family. He charges out of the bushes with his wooden training sword and yells a fierce battle cry. He leaps into the air and strikes the giant bird right in the face. The bird barely flinches and immediately smacks Alan away with its massive yellow claw. Alan crashes hard into the dirt but quickly recovers and summons his Fido wolf pack. A group of fierce gray and white wolves charges out of a thick mist and completely surrounds the giant bird. The wolves aggressively bite into the bird's neck and back to tear it down. The alba heron screeches loudly and unleashes a massive burst of glowing blue magical energy. The blast completely obliterates the wolf pack and sends Alan flying backward into the flowers. Alan grabs the broken pieces of his wooden sword and tries to attack again, but the bird hits him even harder. Alan collapses in the grass and clutches his side in extreme pain. He suddenly realizes a massive flaw in his summoner class. Every time one of his summoned creatures gets defeated in battle, he instantly loses the stat buffs associated with that card. With his wolf pack wiped out, his physical strength rapidly drains away. He lies completely helpless on his back in the tall grass while the giant alba heron hovers directly over him. He weakly holds up his broken wooden sword to defend himself, but he knows his enhanced strength is totally gone. He grits his teeth in sheer terror as the massive bird screeches right in his face, fully realizing that this reckless encounter might actually be the end of his life. Alan lies in a grassy field. He struggles against a giant bird called an alba heron. He uses a wooden sword to block its massive beak. He realizes his stats are lower without his previous summons. He needs to cripple the monster to win. He shouts. He summons his insect creatures. The orange bugs fly through the air. They latch on to the giant bird's neck. They immediately start draining its energy. The alba heron screeches in pain. It tries to shake them off. Alan then summons his wolf pack. The small wolves leap forward. They bite into the bird's feathers. Alan uses this distraction to leap into the air. He swings his wooden sword. He strikes the bird right on the head. A surge of energy hits the monster. The alba heron collapses to the ground in defeat. Alan sees a notification in his book confirming the kill. The book says he gained experience points. He celebrates his first successful monster hunt. He drags the massive bird back to his family in the village. Rodin, Teresia, Mash, and Krina look at the creature in absolute shock. Rodin asks Alan how he managed to kill it. Alan lies. He claims he just surprised it when it landed nearby. Rodin inspects the carcass. He notices several bite marks on the bird. He asks Alan if he bit the monster. Alan nervously makes up an excuse. He claims he fought on pure instinct and avoids mentioning his summons. Later, Krina's father, Gerda, helps Alan process the monster. Gerda hangs the bird from a wooden frame. He drains its blood into a trench. He teaches Alan that the bird loses most of its weight after bleeding out. He mentions that the wings are very valuable. Gerda then explains the tax system. He tells Alan that serfs have to give 60% of their hunt to the upper class. He adds that this tax applies to all monsters above D rank. Alba herons fall into this category. Gerda uses a knife to cut a purple magic stone out of the bird. He explains that magic stones are also taxed. He notes they are useless to villagers anyway. Gerda then comes up with a plan. He suggests using Rodin's severe injury as leverage. He wants to negotiate a better deal with the village chief. Alan loves the idea. He whispers a secret plan to Gerda. Gerda and Alan go to the village chief's house. They present the dead alba heron to the chief. Gerda offers to give the chief the wings as tax. He asks to keep the rest of the meat for the family. The chief refuses. He explains that the baron recently demanded even more meat. Gerda decides to play the pity card. He angrily blames the chief for Rodin's injuries. He reminds the chief that he forced commoners to join the hunt. This led directly to Rodin getting hurt. Gerda claims that Rodin's family will starve to death during the winter because of the chief's bad orders. Alan plays along. He pretends to faint from extreme hunger. Gerda catches Alan. He loudly blames the chief for the boy's suffering, but Chief feels intense guilt and pressure. He caves in. He agrees to let them keep the meat. He says he will only take the wings and the magic stone. Alan immediately drops his dizzy act. He smiles. He thanks the chief. He casually asks if this deal applies to all future catches. The chief realizes he got tricked. He agrees to the terms anyway. He tells Alan to just try his best to catch another one. A few days later, Alan goes back out to hunt. He finds 2 alba herons resting in a field. He sets up a trap using his frog summons to provoke them. Once the birds are distracted, Alan summons his bugs to drain their energy. He then forces a magical black sphere into one of the birds' mouths. He calls out his wolf pack to finish the job. The wolves bite onto the necks of both birds. They drag them down to the ground. Alan leaps into the air. He strikes one of the birds with his wooden sword. He flawlessly defeats both monsters without losing a single summon. His book updates. It shows he earned enough experience points to reach level 2. Alan opens his status menu. He sees his health and magic points fully restored. He notices his stat increases are only 60% of what they should be. He realizes this is a penalty from his extreme difficulty setting. Even so, he is incredibly hyped about his massive stat gains. He hugs his book. He celebrates surviving the brutal trials of the gods. He decides it is finally time to tell his family the truth about his abilities. Alan returns home with the 2 dead birds. He greets Rodin and tells him about the successful hunt. Later, Alan spars with Krina in the yard. She easily beats him with her wooden sword. Alan realizes he needs to hunt 20 more birds to reach level 3. He worries because winter is approaching fast. Night falls. Alan sits by the fire with Rodin and Teresia. He decides to give them a cover story for his new powers. He claims that the god of creation, Elmea, gave him a divine oracle when he was a baby. He tells his parents that Elmea blessed him with immense power and wisdom to overcome impossible trials. Rodin asks how this explains his sudden strength. Alan explains that his fast healing and low appraisal stats are direct results of the harsh divine trials slowing his natural progression. He completely hides the fact that he is a reincarnated gamer and a summoner. He worries that his parents would misunderstand his ability to control monsters. Teresia completely buys the story. She bursts into tears. She pulls Alan into a tight hug. She realizes Alan has been fighting dangerous monsters all by himself to pass the trials and provide for the family. Rodin also believes the story. He tells Alan that Elmea specifically chose him for this path. He promises that the family will fully support him from now on. Rodin asks Alan to keep the oracle a secret from the rest of the village. He wants to avoid unwanted attention. However, Rodin asks for permission to tell Gerda. He wants to brag about Alan's divine blessing, just like Gerda brags about Krina's sword talent. Alan happily agrees. Time passes. Alan turns 6 years old. Winter arrives. Snow covers the village. Alan and Rodin walk through the streets carrying heavy backpacks full of dried meat. Rodin explains the societal differences between serfs and commoners. He tells Alan that commoners do not pay the 60% yield tax on their hunts. Instead, they pay a flat head tax. This tax costs 3 gold coins per adult and 1 gold coin per child every single year. Rodin also reveals a secret. He says serfs can actually buy commoner status. They have to pay a massive fee of 10 gold coins per family member. Alan quickly calculates the cost in his head. He realizes his family has 4 members now. With the new baby on the way, his family will soon have 5 members. This means they will need exactly 50 gold coins to become commoners. They enter a local shop to trade their dried boar and albaharon meat. Alan watches the barter process closely. He learns the local exchange rates for goods. 1 pack of jerky trades for 4 days of firewood. It can also be traded for 1 bag of salt, 4 malmo fruits, or 1 popo fruit. He talks to a salt merchant. He asks the older man about the actual currency values. The merchant explains the coin system. 1 gold coin equals 100 silver coins. 1 silver coin equals 10 copper coins. This makes 1,000 copper coins equal to 1 gold. Alan does the math in his head. He knows 1 bundle of jerky sells for exactly 1 silver coin. He divides the numbers. He figures out he needs to hunt 500 albaharons to earn 50 gold coins. He smiles confidently. He treats the massive goal like a simple grinding quest in a video game. Alan leaves the market. He visits the village apothecary. He asks the bald shopkeeper for medicine that restores magic points. The shopkeeper rudely tells him they do not carry anything like that. Alan asks where the regular healing herbs are. The shopkeeper points to the back of the room. Alan walks over to the shelves. He uses his grimoire to perfectly sketch the herbs in the shop. He realizes he can use his book as a drawing pad. He then asks the shopkeeper about a rare healing item called the Malerze flower. The shopkeeper gets extremely angry at the mention of the flower. He complains about Krina's father, Gerda. He explains that Gerda burst into the shop a month ago. Gerda desperately begged for the flower to save his friend. The shopkeeper wanted 5 gold coins for it. Gerda dropped to his knees and begged him to lower the price to 3 gold coins. Gerda forced the shopkeeper to sell it at a massive discount on credit. The shopkeeper says he was anxious until Gerda finally brought the money. Alan realizes Gerda went completely out of his way to save Rodin's life. He feels deep gratitude toward Gerda for being such a good friend. To make up for the lost profits, Alan places a bundle of dried meat on the counter. He gives it to the shopkeeper for free. The shopkeeper is surprised. He thanks Alan for the generous gift. Alan leaves the shop. He spots some expensive metal weapons on display in a window. Suddenly, a boy named Dogora blocks his path. Dogora is accompanied by his blonde friend Pelmoas. Dogora aggressively demands that Alan become his minion. Alan completely ignores him. He tries to walk away. Dogora gets angry and blocks him again. Alan drops his heavy backpack. He pulls out his wooden sword. He accepts the challenge and tells Dogora to grab a weapon. Dogora grabs a wooden club. He charges at Alan. Alan easily blocks the heavy strikes. He analyzes Dogora's fighting style. He notes his raw power as an axe user. However, Alan realizes Dogora is nowhere near as strong as Krina. Alan quickly dodges a swing. He smacks Dogora right on the head with his wooden sword. Dogora falls to the ground in defeat. Alan puts his sword away. He calmly tells Dogora he will visit his dad's blacksmith shop someday. Dogora sits in the dirt. He yells in frustration as Alan walks away. Sometime later, Rodin takes off his bandages. He shows his family that his terrible chest wound is completely healed. Teresia gives birth to a healthy baby girl named Miura. Alan happily holds his new baby sister. He adores her cute face. Meanwhile, Alan continues to spar with Dogora at Krina's house. Alan effortlessly beats Dogora again. He knocks him to the ground. Dogora complains about his inability to land a single hit. Mash also trains with the older kids. He uses a wooden pole. He shows genuine talent as a spear user. Later that night, Gerda and Rodin return home with grim expressions. They gather around the fire with Alan and Teresia to discuss a new order from the village chief. Gerda explains that the chief wants them to hunt 15 boars for the Baron before winter ends. To meet this massive quota, the chief demands that the inexperienced commoners join the hunt again. Teresia gets angry. She points out that the commoners almost got Rodin killed last time. Gerda says the Baron also wants 20 boars next year. If the hunters fail to deliver, the village will be forced to recruit more serfs from outside. Alan points out that more serfs will result in less farmland for everyone currently living in the village. Rodin and Gerda complain about the unfairness of the situation. They argue that the commoners are completely useless in a fight. They will only drag the experienced hunters down. Alan listens quietly. He steps in. He tells his dad and Gerda that he has a solution. He claims he will use the divine wisdom blessed to him by the god Elmea. He explains that he knows exactly how to integrate weak beginners into a hunting party. He assures them he can create a strategy that allows the newbies to gain experience safely without risking anyone's life. He asks the men to let him handle the planning for the upcoming hunt. The adults listen to his confident proposal. The next morning, the sun rises over the village. Alan walks out into the fields alongside Rodin and Gerda. They all carry their weapons and wear fur capes. They approach the massive wooden gates where a large group of nervous commoners is waiting. Alan looks out at the hunting party with a determined expression, fully prepared to lead the group to victory. Rodin is fully healed and ready to join the village warriors on a boar hunt. Alan tags along with the group, but his dad strictly tells him just to watch from the sidelines. Rodin explains to the other men that they are using Alan's hunting strategy today. The villagers form 3 separate groups to take down the monsters safely. First, the bait team lures a massive brown boar out of the dense forest. Next, the tank team steps up and holds the aggressive beast in place with their long wooden spears. Finally, the strike team rushes in and attacks the boar's vitals to finish it off. The plan works perfectly. The men easily kill the giant creature and avoid taking any damage. The young hunters celebrate their victory. They suddenly feel a massive surge of power flowing through their bodies. They realize they just leveled up by overcoming a trial of the gods. Alan watches them and eagerly checks his magical grimoire. He expects to see his own stats increase from the battle. He is extremely disappointed to find his pages completely blank. He gets absolutely no experience points at all. He realizes the system does not count him as a participant just for standing nearby and giving advice. He feels incredibly frustrated by this bitter defeat. However, he accepts the thanks of the other hunters who praise his brilliant strategy and credit him for their success. Later that day, Alan talks to an older local butcher near the village well. He asks the man to butcher several giant birds called aldeherons for him. He offers to pay the man 2 packs of meat for every single bird he processes. The butcher happily agrees to the deal because it means extra food for his pregnant wife. Alan knows this arrangement will save him a lot of time and effort. He desperately needs to gather 50 gold coins to buy his family out of the oppressive serf system. He figures that outsourcing the butchering locally is much cheaper and far more efficient than traveling all the way to the town to sell the whole carcasses. He wants to maximize his profits and focus all of his energy on grinding for experience. During another boar hunt soon after, the village warriors manage to form 2 separate groups to double their hunting speed. A blonde hunter lures an angry boar out of the bushes. The massive beast aggressively charges at him with its sharp tusks. The other hunters quickly jump in and stab the monster with their spears until it dies. Once again, the men feel a surge of power and loudly celebrate their level-ups. This time, Alan secretly checks his book and smiles widely. He successfully leveled up to level 3. A quick flashback reveals his clever trick to cheat the system. Just before the hunters killed the boar, Alan summoned a small green grasshopper insect. He commanded the bug to fly directly into the boar's path. The massive monster immediately attacked and crushed the tiny summon. Because the boar technically attacked his creature, the system registered Alan as an active participant in the battle. He happily accepts the loss of his bug to gain the precious experience points. He praises his hardcore gamer mindset for figuring out the loophole. 3 months pass, and winter arrives in the region. The village celebrates the start of the new year with a large festival. Alan and his friend Krenna return from the village chieftain's house carrying various gifts. They bring back a bunch of candy and a special jug of liquor. They head inside Alan's house where his entire family is waiting around a warm fire pit. Roden, his wife Theresia, their son Mash, their newborn baby daughter Miura, and Krina's parents Gerda and Matilda are all enjoying a large feast of grilled meat. They talk about the hunting quota given to them by the Lord. Thanks to Alan's highly effective training method, the village will easily meet the Baron's heavy demand of 20 boars this year. During the dinner conversation, Gerda spots the special jug of liquor sitting behind Alan. He eagerly asks the boy about it. Alan proudly explains that the chieftain gave it to him as a personal gift. Roden and Gerda quickly tell him he is way too young to drink alcohol. They try to convince him to hand the jug over to them. Alan smirks and decides to use this opportunity to his advantage. He directly challenges the 2 grown men to an arm wrestling contest. If the adults win, they get to keep the liquor for themselves, but if Alan wins the match, they have to let him wield a spear and fight in the actual boar hunts. The men realize Alan set a clever trap for them. However, they confidently agree to the bet anyway. They think there is absolutely no way a 7-year-old kid can beat them in a test of pure physical strength. Matilda also agrees to the idea. She thinks it will be fun entertainment for their New Year party. Gerda steps up to the table first. He warns Alan that he will not go easy on him with alcohol on the line. Alan remains highly confident. He quickly checks his stats and sees he is now level 6. He also filled his entire inventory with beast summon cards to massively buff his physical attack power beforehand. He places his elbow on the table and locks hands with Gerda. Krenna counts down and officially starts the match. Alan immediately pushes with all his might. Gerda's eyes go wide in complete shock. He feels the ridiculous strength of the little boy pushing against him. Alan violently slams Gerda's hand onto the table and easily wins the first round. Gerda curses loudly in disbelief while Krenna cheers for Alan. Alan secretly calculates Gerda's attack stat based on the struggle. He figures Gerda sits somewhere between 150 and 200 attack power. Next, Rodan steps up to the table to defend his pride. He tells Alan to wait until his arm feels better. Alan insists on going right away. He looks at his father's rough and calloused hands. He deeply respects how hard his dad works for the family. Still, he desperately wants to be treated like an adult. He knows he has to put in way more effort than anyone else by constantly leveling up. They lock hands, and the final match begins. Alan grits his teeth and pushes with every ounce of his enhanced strength. The two of them struggle back and forth in an intense battle of power. The wooden table creaks loudly under the immense pressure. Despite Alan's massive stat buffs, Roden slowly overpowers him. With a final shout, Roden slams Alan's arm down and wins the contest. Alan lies flat on the floor and accepts his defeat. He hands the jug of liquor over to the cheering adults. He realizes his dad's attack stat must be completely insane. He guesses Roden sits somewhere in the C-rank tier above 300 attack power. The adults pour the drinks and happily toast to the new year. Rodan tells Alan not to feel bad about losing. He says Alan is incredibly strong for a kid. However, he completely refuses to let him hunt until he can actually win the arm wrestling match. Alan accepts the strict condition. He secretly plans to reach summon level 4 by autumn to finally beat his father. Suddenly, Matilda gets heavily annoyed by Gerda's loud celebrating. She effortlessly pins the massive man to the floor with just one hand. Alan watches the scene in sheer terror. He realizes Matilda might also have C-rank stats hidden away. He concludes, this entire world has absolute garbage balancing. Time passes and June arrives. Alan turns 7 years old. His summon level finally increases again. He opens his magical grimoire and sees a ton of new information on the pages. He unlocks a brand new tier of E-rank summons. He also discovers a totally new category of creatures to use. He knows he has to fuse them together to unlock specific types. He has plenty of magic points to experiment freely. His card inventory also increases by 10 extra slots. since his summons provide stat buffs based on their level. Filling his inventory with 40 E-rank cards will give him a massive power boost. He realizes he will definitely beat his dad at arm wrestling very soon. He also notices a new fixed skill called storage in his menu. He decides to test it out in his backyard immediately. A large black square appears on the page of his book. He picks up a thick wooden branch and pushes it straight into the black hole. The branch completely disappears into the void. He then tosses a small stone into the square. He listens closely but never hears it hit the bottom. He checks his menu and sees the stone and the branch listed perfectly in his inventory. He realizes he can magically store an unlimited amount of items inside the book as long as they physically fit through the hole. He finds this extremely suspicious. In his long experience as a hardcore gamer, developers usually give players god-tier inventory skills right when they become absolutely necessary to progress the plot. He figures there must be a specific reason he unlocked storage right at this exact moment. He decides to test his new E-rank summons to find the answer. He commands his book to create an E-rank insect. The book suddenly flashes a warning message. It tells him he does not have enough E-rank magic stones to create the creature. Alan is deeply shocked to learn this new rule. He realizes that generating higher tier summons now requires physical crafting materials instead of just magic points. He wonders where he can find magic stones. He suddenly remembers his secret stash of money hidden under the floorboards in his bedroom. He sneaks quietly past his sleeping sister and pulls out a small brown sack. He dumps his silver coins onto the floor and finds a small purple crystal mixed in with the money. He saved the magic stone from a horned rabbit he killed a long time ago. He praises himself for being a smart hoarder and runs back outside. He holds the purple stone in his hand and tries to summon the insect again. The book gives him the exact same error message. He realizes he actually has to put the stone inside his magical storage first for the system to register it. He tosses the purple crystal into the black hole and tries the summon command a third time. This time, the spell works perfectly. The book consumes the stone and generates a new card. It creates a massive, colorful butterfly that lands directly on his back. The bug is incredibly large and gives him a solid boost to his endurance and agility stats. Suddenly, his mother walks outside holding his baby sister. Alan panics internally. He quickly hides the giant butterfly so she does not see his magical powers. He acts like a total goofball and waves his arms to distract her until she walks away. After the close call, he summons his new beast creature. A giant yellow saber-toothed tiger with massive fangs and glowing red eyes appears in the grass. It pounces on him and playfully licks his face. He names the beast Tama. He notes that the tiger provides double the stat buffs of his old F-rank summons. He then tries to combine the butterfly and the tiger to unlock a bird type. The fusion fails completely and wastes his resources. He realizes he needs a lot more magic stones to unlock all the different variations. He faces a brand new problem. The village built a large defensive ditch a few years ago. Because of the ditch, weak monsters like horned rabbits never wander into the town anymore. He needs to find a new source of magic stones to fuel his summons. He goes to the training yard and easily beats a bully in a wooden sword fight. Afterwards, he sits down by a tree with a smart blonde boy named Pelmoas. He asks him about the purple crystals. Pelmoas explains that magic stones drop from defeated monsters. He says they are primarily used to power magical tools in the royal capital. However, he reveals that low-level E-rank stones are considered complete trash. He says they can usually be found just lying around in the dirt. Pelmoas easily finds one on the ground nearby and hands it to Alan. With this new knowledge, Alan spends the next few days scavenging around the entire village. He asks the local villagers to give him their worthless stones. He successfully gathers enough crystals to create every single type of E-rank summon available. He opens his book and admires his full collection. It consists of an insect, a beast, a bird, a plant, and a stone creature. He decides it is finally time to test their actual combat abilities in a real fight. He heads out to a grassy clearing near the dangerous forest. He summons his new bird, a large brown hawk, and sends it high into the sky to scout the area. The hawk screeches loudly and quickly spots a massive brown boar charging through the tall grass straight toward Alan. Alan pretends to trip and fall to the ground. He intentionally scrapes his arm and acts helpless. Instantly, his plant summon appears beside him. It is a small green sprout creature. It uses its magical glowing leaves to completely heal Alan's injury in a matter of seconds. The aggressive boar continues its relentless charge. Alan calls out his insect summon. The The giant, colorful butterfly flutters in front of the beast. It showers the boar with shimmering golden particle. This magical dust severely weakens the boar and lowers its stats. Alan then commands his beast to attack. The yellow saber-toothed tiger leaps forward and fiercely bites the giant boar right on the neck. Blood sprays everywhere as the tiger easily kills the monster in one single strike. Just when Alan thinks the battle is over, a second massive boar bursts out of the bushes behind him. The monster leaps into the air and prepares to crush him. Before the beast can land, Alan summons his final creature. A massive gray stone golem shaped like a giant wall materializes right in front of him. The golem effortlessly blocks the attack and completely pins the giant boar to the ground. Alan cheers for his creatures and commands the tiger to finish off the second monster. Alan stands alone in the middle of the clearing, surrounded by his defeated enemies. He reflects on everything he learned today. For the past 7 years, he constantly wondered how a summoner is supposed to fight in this world. Without any game guides or walkthroughs, he had to figure out his true potential all by himself. He calls out his entire army of creatures to stand beside him. He realizes that every single summon type is designed to fulfill a very specific combat role. The insects exist to apply devastating debuffs to the enemies. The beasts serve as his main physical offense. The birds are perfect for gathering intelligence and scouting the area. The plants act as dedicated healers to keep him alive. Finally, the stone golems provide absolute defense to block incoming damage. This perfect combination of abilities allows Alan to fulfill every single role of a traditional adventuring party all by himself. He finally understands why the developers gave him the storage skill at this exact moment in his progression. He needed the unlimited inventory space to carry the massive amount of magic stones required to generate his diverse army. He smiles confidently as he looks at his powerful creatures. He declares that he now possesses an unrivaled army capable of overcoming any obstacle and destroying any enemy in his path. He vows that his ultimate power makes the summoner class far stronger than even the legendary Demon Lord. The village leaders, including Chief Deboji, gather Roden, Gerda, and Alan for a serious meeting. Deboji explains that Baron Granville plans to visit Krina village next month to watch their famous boar hunts in person. Deboji wants Alan to act as the official tour guide for the Baron during his stay. Alan initially refuses because he hates the idea of entertaining a snooty noble and feels that the offered fruit is a cheap bribe. However, Roden and the others remind Alan that the Baron has the power to grant commoner status. Alan realizes this is his golden ticket to escape the restrictive serfdom system and finally hunt monsters outside the village limits. He instantly changes his mind and eagerly accepts the job. The next day, the Baron arrives at the village in a fancy red and black carriage. He is accompanied by his spoiled daughter Cecil, an old butler named Sebas, and a veteran knight named Xenoph. Chief Deboji welcomes them nervously and hosts a grand dinner for the guests. During the meal, the Baron apologizes for demanding 20 boars from the village, blaming a rival noble named Viscount Carnell for putting him on the spot in front of the king. The Baron then takes a bite of his food and is absolutely blown away by the delicious taste. Alan steps up and calmly explains that the dish is made from fresh Albaharon meat flavored with a special blend of herbs. The Baron is highly impressed by Alan's professional manners. Xenoph recognizes Alan as Roden's son and assumes they come from a respected knightly background. Deboji quickly clarifies that they are actually just lowly serfs. Hearing this, Cecil throws a massive tantrum and yells at her father for letting a filthy serf eat in the same guest hall as them. The Baron strictly scolds Cecil and tells her she must treat the villagers with respect. Cecil apologizes to her father but continues to glare angrily at Alan. Xenoph then questions the village's ability to successfully hunt 20 boars in a single year. He confidently offers to have his trained knights take over the hunts if the serfs fail to meet the quota. Cecil gets very excited at the idea of watching real knights fight monsters up close. However, Alan steps up and confidently states that 20 boars is actually a very paltry number. He promises to prove their true strength during the hunt tomorrow. The following day, Alan leads the noble group to a tall wooden watchtower located right on the edge of the dangerous forest. He guides the Baron, Cecil, Sebas, and Xenoph up to the balcony so they can get a safe overhead view of the action. Alan points out the hunting team standing in the sandy arena down below. He explains that the frontline hunters are wearing special armor crafted from the leftover pelts, bones, and fangs of the boars they hunted last year. He thanks the Baron on behalf of his father for giving them official permission to use the monster parts. Meanwhile, the lightly equipped bait team runs deep into the forest. Alan tells the nobles that the bait team's main job is to run incredibly fast and lure the aggressive boars out of the dense woods. Soon after, a massive brown boar with glowing red eyes charges out of the trees, chasing aggressively right behind the bait team. The bait team quickly dives behind a set of large wooden shields held firmly by the tank team. The giant boar slams directly into the thick shields but totally fails to break through the barrier. Alan explains that these large shields are heavily reinforced with 2 layers of the toughest hide found on a boar's back. While the tank team securely holds the monster in place, the strike team moves in from the sides. The hunters use long metal spears to violently stab the boar in the neck and back. Blood splatters across the arena as the hunters easily deliver a fatal blow. The massive beast collapses to the ground and dies instantly. The hunters loudly celebrate their quick victory. The nobles in the watchtower are completely shocked by the brutal efficiency of the serfs. Cecil covers her mouth in sheer disgust at the sight of the blood, but Xenov and the Baron are highly impressed by the warriors' tactical skills. Suddenly, things go terribly wrong. 2 more massive boars charge out of the forest at the exact same time, furiously chasing after the rest of the fleeing bait team. Xenov panics and immediately orders his armored knights to step in and save the serfs from the dangerous double attack. However, Alan calmly tells the knight to stand down and watch the action unfold. Down in the arena, the hunting team does not panic at all. The leader shouts a quick command, and the hunters seamlessly split into 2 separate groups. Each group uses their own wooden shield wall to perfectly block the charging boars. They push the massive monsters back and easily trap both of them against the barriers. Alan explains to the nobles that letting a boar escape is a massive failure, so the hunters trained heavily to handle multiple targets at once. He goes on to explain that for the past 10 years, the serfs struggled greatly because they lacked proper armor and lost 60% of their hard-earned meat to the strict taxes. By mastering this highly efficient shield wall strategy, they managed to slowly upgrade their spears and armor piece by piece to reach this level of success. The hunters violently stab the 2 trapped boars until they both bleed out and die on the sandy floor. With 3 boars dead in just a few minutes, the hunters cheer loudly for their massive victory. Alan smiles and feels incredibly relieved that the hunt went off without a single hitch. He then turns to the Baron and drops a massive bombshell. He reveals that the village already successfully hunted 7 boars before the Baron even arrived, meaning they only have 10 left to meet the annual quota. He guarantees they will finish the job by next month, proving that the knights are completely unnecessary. The Baron laughs heartily and heavily praises Alan's brilliant planning. Taking advantage of the great mood, Alan makes 2 formal requests on behalf of the village hunters. First, he asks for permission to construct 2 more shield walls so they can hunt even faster next year. The Baron instantly agrees to the idea. Second, Alan asks for permission to trade their excess boar meat for imported liquor. The Baron is very confused by this specific request. Alan explains that the massive amount of hunted meat will eventually crash the local market value. By trading the extra meat for alcohol instead, they can protect their profits and also use the liquor to boost the morale of the hardworking hunters who risk their lives every single day. Xenov fully supports this idea, knowing exactly how important morale is for active soldiers. The Baron gladly approves the second request and heavily praises Alan for his incredible intelligence. Cecil gets extremely jealous of the positive attention Alan is receiving. She points her finger at him and yells that he shouldn't let the praise go to his head, acting like a total spoiled brat before Sebas guides her away to their carriage. Alan watches her leave and feels highly relieved that he probably won't have to deal with the annoying noble girl ever again. Later that day, the Baron holds a formal reward ceremony inside the local manor. Roden, Gerda, and Alan kneel respectfully on the red carpet in front of the Baron's large wooden throne. The Baron formally commends the 2 men for their amazing hunting skills and declares that they deserve a grand reward for their efforts. Alan gets super excited, secretly hoping for social mobility rather than just a bag of useless money. To his absolute delight, the Baron officially elevates Roden, Gerda, and their entire families to commoner status. Alan mentally celebrates his massive victory. He realizes that as a commoner, he can finally leave the restricted village limits and fulfill his ultimate gamer dream of hunting legendary white dragons in the distant mountains. The Baron then extends the reward, stating that any serf who has participated in the boar hunts for over 10 years will also be granted commoner status. Roden and Gerda thank the Baron profusely for his incredible generosity. Before wrapping up the meeting, the Baron mentions that the king wants to use Krina village as a shining example for the entire kingdom. He asks Roden to explain the complete history of how the boar hunts originally started. Roden hesitates because it brings up painful memories, so Gerda steps up to tell the story instead. He explains that, 13 years ago, a large group of serfs relocated to this frontier land to build the village and escape starvation. After 6 months of hard labor clearing the forest, a massive boar suddenly attacked their settlement and devoured all their winter food supplies. Since returning to their old homes was impossible, Roden rallied the men to fight back. Even though they had no armor or real weapons, they used pickaxes and farming hoes to fight the giant beast. They managed to kill the boar and even leveled up by surviving a trial of the gods, but they tragically lost a close friend during the brutal battle. Gerda explains that Rodin still blames himself for their friend's death to this very day. The Baron offers his deep condolences and heavily praises Rodin's youthful bravery for saving the village. As a final bonus reward, the Baron tells Rodin to ask for anything he wants. Alan mentally cheers, hoping his dad will ask for some expensive liquor to celebrate their new commoner status. Instead, Rodin asks the Baron to hire Alan to work at his noble estate. Rodin explains that Alan is incredibly smart and would be a massive asset as a simple hallboy. Alan falls into a state of absolute panic. He desperately wants to stay in the village to hunt monsters and grind his levels. He knows that moving to a strict noble household will completely ruin his freedom and his long-term gaming plans. He quietly begs his dad to take the request back, but the Baron finds the idea very interesting. He consults with Sebas, who agrees that Alan is quite clever and capable. Alan tries to think of any possible excuse to get out of the situation, sweating bullets as he imagines being locked away in a boring mansion. However, the Baron makes his final decision and officially appoints Alan as the personal manservant of the Granbell family. Cecil completely loses her mind and screams in shock, completely disgusted by the idea of a former serf living in her house. Sebas quickly reminds her that Alan is officially a commoner now, so it is perfectly acceptable. Alan realizes there is absolutely no difference between a hallboy and a manservant when it comes to his total lack of freedom. He tries to protest, but Rodin smiles proudly and pats him on the head, completely unaware that he just ruined his son's life. Realizing he cannot refuse a direct order from the Baron without causing a massive political incident, Alan completely gives up. He forces a fake smile, bows his head respectfully, and formally accepts the job, knowing his hardcore gaming plans are totally doomed. Time passes, and the day of Alan's departure finally arrives. Inside his rustic home, Alan's mother, Teresia, helps him put on his brand new black and green manservant suit. She cries softly, completely heartbroken that her oldest son has to leave home at such a young age. Alan thanks her and steps outside to find the entire village gathered to see him off. He spots his best friend Krina waiting for him on the dirt path. Krina holds a wooden training sword and excitedly challenges Alan to one final duel before he leaves. Alan happily agrees and grabs his own wooden sword. He proudly announces his new title as manservant while Krina formally declares herself the Sword Lord. The two kids charge at each other and begin clashing their weapons intensely in the grassy field. The adult villagers watch from the sidelines, finding the duel to be a very touching way for the kids to say goodbye. However, the villagers quickly realize something is completely wrong. Alan easily overpowers Krina and perfectly blocks all her heavy strikes. Krina grits her teeth and tries her best, but Alan is simply too fast for her to hit. Alan secretly reveals his hardcore gamer strategy to himself. He used up almost all of his saved magic stones to create 20 copies of his bird summon, putting absolutely all of his points directly into his agility stat. He moves incredibly fast, dodging every single swing Krina makes. He knows that Krina will soon leave for the Academy City to become a royal knight, meaning they might never see each other again. He wants to leave her with a strong memory of his power. He easily disarms Krina and wins the intense fight. Krina stands there completely shocked that she actually lost a physical battle. Seeing her deep disappointment, Alan quickly lies and says he thinks the match was a draw. Krina believes him and asks if it really was a tie. Alan promises that they will settle the score properly when they meet again in the future. Krina instantly cheers up and happily promises to win next time. They shake hands over their wooden swords and share a bright smile. With the duel finished, Alan walks over to say his final goodbyes to his family. Teresia holds his baby sister Mula while wiping away her own tears. She gently strokes Alan's head and tells him to stay healthy. Alan promises he will. He then turns to his crying little brother Mash. He tells Mash to stop crying and step up to protect their mother and sister while he is gone. Mash nods silently while wiping his face. Krina's mother Matilda also steps up and says she will miss him dearly, fondly remembering the day she helped deliver him as a baby. Alan thanks her for everything she has done for his family. Suddenly, Dagora and Palomas pop out from behind a nearby wooden fence. Dagora jumps over the fence to look cool, but he heavily trips and falls flat on his back. Everyone laughs loudly at his clumsy entrance. Dagora gets up and hands Alan a small dagger inside an orange sheath. He acts tough and tells Alan not to say he never gave him anything. Alan is genuinely amazed by the generous gift and thanks his rival for the weapon. A man then picks up Alan's large tan sack of belongings and tells him it is time to go. Alan waves goodbye to the massive crowd of villagers. they all wave back with very sad expressions. As they walk toward the village gate, the man carrying the sack tells Alan that working as a manservant is only the first step and that he will go to great places if he works hard. Alan promises to do his best. Teresia calls out one last time, begging him to come back home if things ever get too tough. Alan smiles warmly at his mother's caring words. He walks over to the red and black carriage waiting near the tall wooden gates. Xenoph and the other knights sit on their horses, ready to heavily escort the vehicle. The Baron, Cecil, and Sebas wait patiently inside. Alan climbs into the carriage and takes his seat. The driver snaps the reins, and the horses begin to pull the carriage forward. The large wooden gates of the village slowly close behind them, shutting Alan off from the only home he has ever known. He looks out the window at the passing green hills and the bright blue sky. A single tear falls down his cheek as he quietly says a final goodbye to everyone, leaving his hardcore grinding days behind to start a brand new life serving the noble family in the distant city. Alan starts his new life working as a manservant at the Granville estate and quickly finds himself dealing with the spoiled noble girl Cecil. He carries her on his shoulders in the garden so she can reach some yellow fruit on a tree. Cecil takes a bite of the fruit and immediately complains that it tastes gross. Alan points out that fruit growing high up on trees usually tends to be sour, and Cecil gets mad that he did not warn her beforehand. She demands that he go to the market to buy her a sweet papo fruit to cleanse her palate. Alan agrees to the task and watches a massive magic airship fly across the bright blue sky above the estate, totally amazed by the advanced technology in this city. The next morning, Alan wakes up in his small servant quarters feeling incredibly refreshed. He happily absorbs glowing green particles from his plant summons and thinks about how much better this room is compared to his old life. He heads down to the dining hall for breakfast and greets the head servant Rickle. Rickle asks if Alan is getting along with Cecil, and Alan awkwardly admits that things are somewhat difficult. Rickle feels bad for him and explains that the manservant role is very demanding. Alan asks for clarification on the difference between a hallboy and a manservant, since his father practically begged for this specific job. Rickle explains that higher-ranking staff like butlers and manservants are formally considered actual members of the noble family, whereas hallboys are just occasional helpers who do not get that special status. Hearing this, Alan finally understands why his father cried tears of joy back in the village, realizing his dad secured him a permanent place in a noble household. Alan looks at his simple meal of soup and bread and wonders if the Baron is just frugal, but later that day, he sees that the noble family eats very similar food. During dinner, Alan stands by respectfully while Baron Granville and his wife praise his excellent manners. They note that he behaves perfectly despite being a former serf without any special talent. Cecil immediately uses the opportunity to brag about her own abilities. She proudly declares that she is a 2-star wizardess and mentions that her older brother Mihai is a swordsman. The Baron quickly scolds Cecil for bragging about her talents at the dinner table. This makes her younger brother Thomas start crying because he is the only child in the family without a special talent. The Baron comforts Thomas and tells him not to worry. He explains that Thomas will attend the Nobles College in the royal capital instead of the prestigious Academy City, which is strictly reserved for those with talents. The Baron adds that he also lacked a talent and attended the Nobles College, which is exactly where he met their mother, proving that Thomas can still have a great life. Cecil apologizes to her brother for making him cry, and Alan quietly watches the family dynamic unfold. Later, Alan gets the afternoon off and eagerly explores the bustling city streets. He is amazed by the massive stone buildings and the large crowds of people. He eventually finds the Adventurers Guild and excitedly runs inside to register as a monster hunter. He walks up to the receptionist and asks to join, but she kindly informs him that the minimum age requirement is 12. Since Alan is only 8 years old, he is totally devastated that he has to wait 4 more years. He refuses to give up on his monster hunting dreams and decides to gather some useful information instead. He walks over to the bounty board and reads the various monster posters, noting the rewards for horned rabbits, goblins, and orcs. A large, blue-haired warrior named Raven walks up and tells Alan that the guild is not a playground. Alan apologizes but quickly asks Raven why the bounty posters do not list the monster spawning locations. Raven sighs but explains that the lower-rank monsters can be found almost anywhere. Alan asks how the ranks work, and Raven tells him that the monster ranks get much higher the further away they are from the city. Alan realizes that the strongest monsters live near the distant White Dragon Mountains. He points to an A-rank White Dragon poster with a massive reward and asks why nobody has killed it yet. Raven explains that the dragon is simply too powerful and completely terrifies anyone who tries to fight it. However, the mountains are full of valuable mithril deposits, so the guild keeps raising the bounty hoping someone will eventually clear the area for miners. Alan instantly understands that the mithril must be worth a massive fortune. Raven's party members, a silver-haired girl named Rita and a pink-haired healer named Milsey, walk over and tell Raven it is time to go to the pub. Raven tells Alan to go home and leaves with his group. Armed with this new knowledge, Alan decides to put his plan into action. That night, he runs through the misty city streets and approaches the large main gate. The guard stops him and asks for a travel permit. Alan casually shows the guard his silver Granville family crest. The guard instantly panics, apologizes for disrespecting a noble affiliate, and immediately opens the heavy gates. Alan runs out into the dark wilderness, incredibly excited to finally hunt monsters outside the restrictive village limits after waiting 8 long years. He runs about 10 kilometers into the forest to safely target D-rank monsters. Once he finds a good spot, he summons a black hawk named Hawkins using his bird E-card. He checks Hawkins' stats and sees it has a high intelligence level of 150, meaning the bird can perfectly understand complex orders. He tells Hawkins to land and walk to the right, and the bird obeys flawlessly. Since the encounter rate is low, Alan decides to summon 5 more birds and orders them to use their Hawkeye skill to locate nearby monsters. He then tests his beast E-card and summons a saber-toothed cat named Tama. He tries to give Tama a command, but the beast completely ignores him. Alan realizes Tama only has 28 intelligence and cannot understand his words. Soon, Hawkins returns and leads Alan to a group of 5 armed goblins. Alan decides to test his combat efficiency. He summons 10 Tamas at once and orders them to attack. The large beasts easily overpower the goblins and tear them apart. Next, Alan tests his insect E-card and summons a massive glowing butterfly named Papillon. The butterfly drops sparkling yellow powder on the remaining goblins, instantly putting them to sleep. Alan easily finishes off the sleeping monsters with rocks and his dagger. After the battle, the summons vanish and leave the dead goblin bodies behind. Alan checks his status and gets extremely excited to see he earned 1,000 experience points. He realizes that hunting goblins is incredibly efficient because they are easy to kill and yield great rewards. He orders his birds to search for more goblin groups within a 3-kilometer radius. He spends the entire night farming monsters, killing over 80 goblins and 5 horned rabbits. He levels up twice and collects a ton of magic stones. He also gathers valuable data, noting that the butterfly's sleep powder has an 80% success rate against goblins. He realizes he has to manage his summon ranks carefully because lower rank magic stones cannot be used to summon higher rank creatures. As he prepares to hunt more, he notices his birds are just sitting on the tree branches refusing to move. He taunts them for being lazy until he suddenly realizes that the birds simply cannot see in the dark. Without his birds to guide him, Alan is completely lost in the dark woods and has to miraculously find his own way back to the city. 1 month passes, and Alan continues his routine of working during the day and farming monsters at night. He buys some heavy iron balls from a local weapon shop to use as stronger projectiles against the monsters. Later that day, Baron Granville calls Alan into his grand office for a serious meeting alongside the old butler Sabas. The Baron praises Alan for doing a great job as a manservant, but demands to know where he goes on his days off, noting that he always leaves early and returns late. Alan knows he cannot lie completely, so he claims he has been hunting monsters in the forest because he is the son of Rodin the boar hunter, and hunting runs in his blood. The Baron accepts this excuse, believing Alan just has a natural instinct for the wild. He assumes Alan is only hunting weak-horned rabbits and asks what he does with the meat. Alan admits he just throws it all away. The Baron warns him that selling it to local butchers could cause a massive scandal for the noble family, so he offers to have the Granville estate buy the meat directly from Alan for 1 silver coin per bundle. Alan is absolutely thrilled by this deal because it allows him to hunt openly and make a ton of extra money on the side. 6 months later, Alan is resting inside a hollow tree trunk in the forest while eating an apple. He plans to farm 100 goblins and some horned rabbits. His birds fly down to him, but they act very strange and urgently fly away. Alan follows them, annoyed that they are moving so fast and leading him way past the 3-kilometer limit he set. He chases the birds deep into the woods and suddenly finds Raven, Rita, and Milsey fighting for their lives against a large group of goblins. Raven is lying on the ground with a massive, bloody wound on his stomach. Rita tries to defend him with her shield, but the goblins are pushing her back. Milsey cries in panic because she is completely out of mana and cannot heal Raven. Alan realizes the iron balls won't be enough, and he cannot use his summons in front of the adventurers, so he decides to fight them directly. He draws his dagger and charges into the battle. Thanks to his constant grinding, Alan is now level 12 and has incredibly high agility and attack stats from his passive summon buffs. He easily dodges the goblin's attacks and swiftly slashes them to pieces with his small blade. After killing the monsters, Alan walks over to the injured adventurers. He pulls out a glowing green leaf of life that he generated using his plant summon. He places the leaf on Raven's mortal wound, and the injury instantly closes and heals completely. The three adventurers are absolutely shocked by the miraculous recovery. Alan then uses another leaf to heal some nasty scratches on Rita's leg. Raven sits up, recognizes Alan from the Adventurers Guild, and deeply thanks him for saving their lives. He begs Alan to let them repay him with money. Alan declines the cash but asks them to collect 100 E-rank magic stones for him within a week. He also makes them promise to keep his true identity a complete secret. Raven gladly agrees to the terms, and Alan waves goodbye before heading back into the forest. As he walks away, Alan analyzes the healing items. He remembers that it took his father an entire month to recover from a similar wound when using a Moulerze flower. He concludes that the Moulerze flower heals a percentage of maximum health, while his Leaf of Life instantly restores a fixed amount of health points. He also checks his status book and realizes he only gained 80% of his normal experience points from the goblin fight. This confirms that fighting in a party significantly reduces his overall experience gain compared to solo hunting. Alan then confronts his bird Hawkins for blatantly ignoring his orders and leaving the 3-kilometer radius. However, as he looks at the bird, he realizes that Hawkins actually sensed the adventurers were in grave danger and chose to lead him there to save them. Alan is completely blown away by the fact that his summons are fully sapient creatures with their own feelings and morals. He apologizes to Hawkins for yelling and happily praises the bird for doing the right thing, feeling incredibly grateful to have such amazing creatures by his side. Sometime later, back at the Grand Bell Mansion, Alan is busy working his usual manservant duties. He is in the dimly lit pantry with Cecil, carrying her on his shoulders so she can reach a high shelf. Cecil wants to grab a specific glass jar to make jam cookies because her older brother Mihai is coming home next spring. She constantly complains that Alan is doing a terrible job keeping her steady. Alan gets annoyed by her bad attitude and sarcastically tells his invisible bird summon to go dump Cecil in a lake. Cecil hears his snarky comment and furiously pulls his hair in retaliation. The sudden pain causes Alan to lose his footing and they both tumble backward. They crash hard onto the wooden floor, sending the glass jars and baskets flying everywhere. The loud crash echoes throughout the entire estate, but a man outside simply assumes it was just a stray cat making a mess and goes right back to sleep. During a quiet winter evening at the Granvelle estate, Baron Granvelle and his family sit down for dinner. The Baron tastes the meat and is surprised by how delicious it is, praising Alan for hunting the horned rabbits. Cecil chimes in, noting that Krenna Village successfully met their quota of 20 great boars. She complains about not having any boar meat for dinner this year, remembering how it used to be the highlight of their winter meals. Alan calmly explains that all the boars were sent to the royal capital because the king specifically ordered them to hunt more. The Baron tells his daughter not to be selfish, and she sadly apologizes. Alan feels bad for her, thinking it is crazy that common serfs get to eat more meat than the children of a noble. Cecil then turns to Alan and casually orders him to hunt a white deer for them instead. Her younger brother Thomas quickly reminds her that she cannot just give Alan orders directly, but the Baron steps in and approves the request. Alan confidently accepts the challenge, knowing that a white deer is a C-rank monster just like the boars and feeling eager to test his skills. The next day, Alan heads out into the snowy wilderness to track down the beast. He uses his summoned birds to locate a massive white deer with glowing blue antlers in the forest. Knowing the creature is incredibly dangerous up close, Alan summons a squad of 4 colorful frogs and orders them to use their provoke skill. The frogs taunt the deer, drawing its attention and causing it to charge at them. Alan carefully manages the aggro, recalling his frogs right before the deer can crush them, and then sends them back out to continuously distract the beast. He treats the entire encounter like a video game boss fight, perfectly abusing his summons mechanics to keep the deer occupied until he eventually defeats it. Later, back at the estate courtyard, a group of guards panics and points their spears at the giant white deer lying on the stone tiles. They are completely shocked to see such a massive monster inside the walls, but Alan calmly explains that he hunted it specifically for Thomas. The entire noble family comes out to see the prize and they are absolutely thrilled to have something so special for their upcoming New Year's party. While the family celebrates, the Baron and his head butler Sabas have a private conversation. Sabas is deeply concerned about how an 8-year-old boy managed to hunt a C-rank monster all by himself, and the Baron orders him to investigate Alan's true capabilities immediately. A few days later, the Baron summons Alan to his office to discuss his recent accomplishments. He tells Alan that they have decided to assign him the official title of huntsman. As the family's huntsman, Alan will be responsible for hunting monsters to provide food for the estate and rescuing townsfolk from any monster attacks. To compensate him, the Baron offers a salary of 100 silver coins a month, which is double his current wage. Alan is absolutely thrilled by the deal because getting paid a fixed salary instead of a per-monster bounty works out perfectly for him. He happily accepts the title, thinking he will now have the freedom to hunt monsters every single day and farm experience points without any restrictions. However, Sebas quickly bursts his bubble by explaining that Alan is not expected to hunt every day. He still has to fulfill all his duties as Cecil's manservant and work as a waiter, meaning he will only have time to act as a huntsman about once a week. Alan is extremely disappointed to hear this, and his frustration is clearly visible on his face. Sebas notices his annoyance and threatens to cancel the promotion entirely, forcing Alan to quickly apologize and humbly accept the new schedule so he does not lose the opportunity. Months pass, and spring eventually arrives. A massive, ornate magic airship flies over the city and docks at the station. Alan and Cecil wait among the crowd to greet Cecil's older brother, Mihai, who has just returned from the prestigious Academy City. Cecil is overjoyed to see him and complains that he broke his promise to visit during the summer. Mihai apologizes and gives her a beautiful butterfly souvenir from the royal capital, which instantly cheers her up. Mihai then notices Alan standing quietly with their luggage and praises him for becoming a manservant at such a young age, assuming he must be very gifted. Alan remains perfectly polite and attributes all his success to Cecil's kindness, impressing Mihai with his maturity. Later that week, Alan finishes his huntsman duties by bringing a massive bird monster and several lobs back to the estate. The head chef is amazed by the haul, noting that Alan even managed to catch a giant toad for Mihai. A fellow servant points out that Mihai is currently sparring in the courtyard with Zenoff, the family's white-haired knight commander. Alan watches the duel and is deeply impressed by Mihai's skills, as the young noble easily holds his own against the veteran knight. After the match ends, Mihai praises Zenoff, and Cecil notices Alan standing nearby with his fresh kills. Feeling confident in his own abilities, Mihai challenges Alan to a friendly sparring match. Alan eagerly accepts the offer, taking a mithril sword from Zenoff to use in the fight. Before they begin, Alan secretly opens his floating status book and checks his stats. He sees that he is already level 20 with extremely high attack and agility stats thanks to his summoner buffs. Feeling completely overpowered, Alan assumes he is going to win easily and charges at Mihai. Their swords clash with a massive spark, but Alan quickly realizes that Mihai hits incredibly hard. Alan tries to overwhelm him with speed, only to find out that Mihai is somehow even faster than him. Mihai easily parries all of Alan's strikes and completely dominates the fight until Alan is forced to surrender with Mihai's blade pointed right at his face. The family applauds the match, and Mihai compliments Alan for being pretty tough for his age. Alan is totally humbled and asks how Mihai got so strong in just 1 year. Mihai explains that he had to clear a dangerous monster dungeon over the summer as part of his schoolwork, and he also received direct training from a legendary sword lord at the academy. Alan realizes that talented nobles progress incredibly fast because they live life on normal mode, while he is stuck grinding for experience points on hell mode. Mihai tells Alan that he will not be back until next summer and asks him to take good care of Cecil while he is gone. Alan agrees, but internally he is frustrated with his slow progress and vows to figure out a way to quit his manservant job so he can hunt monsters every single day and close the massive power gap between them. By early April, the Granville estate receives a visit from Viscount Carnell, the ruler of the neighboring fiefdom. Carnell is a portly, arrogant man who sits at the dining table with Baron Granville, aggressively devouring what he believes is the famous great boar meat. In reality, Alan is secretly serving him horned rabbit meat as a petty revenge for Carnell's past actions. While the nobles talk, the head servant Rickle quietly gives Alan a history lesson about their political rivalry. He explains that the White Dragon Mountains separate their two territories and are filled with valuable mithril deposits. However, a massive white dragon currently nests on the Granville side of the mountains, completely blocking their access to the mines and causing their fiefdom to suffer a severe economic downturn. Because the dragon is known to switch sides every 100 years, the Carnell fiefdom used to be the poor one, meaning the two families have been bullying each other for centuries depending on where the dragon decides to sleep. Carnell smugly praises the meat and subtly mocks Granville for complaining about the boar quota in front of the king. The Baron is furious because Carnell is the exact person who snitched to the king and caused the strict quota in the first place, forcing Granville to send all their good meat to the capital. Carnell then shifts the conversation to his own family, proudly announcing that his youngest daughter recently took her appraisal ceremony and turned out to be completely talentless. The Baron looks down with a stern expression, while Alan watches in total confusion. Carnell mockingly expresses pity for Granville because 2 of his children are saddled with talents, referring to it as the heavy burden of a noble's duty. Alan cannot understand why the nobles treat having a talent like a horrible curse. He knows that commoners and serfs celebrate talents as the greatest blessing possible, so he wonders what dark secret the nobles are hiding about their social obligations. Several months later, in October, the 9-year-old Alan finally gets a day off and visits a local tavern to meet up with the adventurer party he saved. He sits down with Raven, Rita, and Milsey, explaining that he wants to start hunting further away from town. He reveals that he has completely exterminated the local goblin population, killing over 10,000 of them, and needs information on C-rank monsters to continue leveling up. Raven is shocked by the sheer number of kills and warns Alan that fighting C-rank monsters is incredibly dangerous. But Alan insists on learning everything he can. The group decides to help him prepare, and the girls drag him to an armor shop. Rita and Milsey tease him by trying to make him wear a pink skirt, but Alan eventually settles on a red cape with a black spiderweb design that provides excellent defense without restricting his movement. Armed with his new gear, Alan runs deep into the forest to test his strength. He checks his floating status book and sees that his enhanced skill has reached level 5, which completely doubles the stats of all his summons. He soon discovers a massive, reddish-brown orc sleeping against a tree. Knowing the orc is a dangerous C-rank monster, Alan wastes no time and summons a squad of yellow saber-toothed lions. The lions charge at the sleeping beast and aggressively tear it apart with glowing energy slashes, killing it before it can even fight back. Alan receives 1,500 experience points and claims the orc's magic stone. He is thrilled that he can now easily defeat C-rank monsters without relying on traps, but he remembers his humiliating loss to Mihai and promises himself to stay humble and keep grinding. As he continues his hunt, he encounters a giant, multi-eyed armored ant in a rocky valley. He knows from Raven's stories that these bugs are extremely deadly in swarms, so he is relieved to find just one. He sends his lion squad to attack, but their sharp claws completely bounce off the ant's thick gray armor. Realizing physical attacks are useless, Alan quickly unsummons the lions and calls out his papillon butterflies. The butterflies drop their sparkling sleep powder on the giant ant, instantly knocking it out. Alan jumps onto the sleeping bug's stomach and tries to stab it with his silver knife to extract its magic stone. However, the ant's shell is as hard as steel, and Alan's blade cannot pierce it at all. The ant suddenly wakes up, sending Alan into a total manic panic. He screams in frustration and wildly stabs the creature with a larger sword over and over again until it finally dies. He earns 3,000 experience points for the kill, but he is still unable to cut through the shell to get the valuable magic stone. He checks his status screen and notices that his intelligence stat is incredibly high. He figures that since physical attacks are not working, he must be meant to melt the armor with magic spells. Later, during a small celebration for his 1-year anniversary as a manservant, Alan meets with an elderly, eye-patch-wearing professor at the estate. He directly asks the professor to test his aptitude for magic, hoping to finally unlock his spellcasting abilities. The professor explains that nobody can use magic without a talent, but he agrees to perform the test anyway using a special crystal ball. Alan places his hands over the light blue orb and focuses all his energy, hoping it will glow to signify his magical potential. He strains with intense effort while Cecil watches smugly, but the crystal ball remains completely dark. The professor casually confirms that Alan has zero aptitude for magic. Alan is absolutely devastated and makes a comical wide-eyed face as the reality sets in. He realizes that his massive intelligence stat is completely useless without the ability to cast spells, leaving him furious and convinced that the summoner class is nothing but a terrible joke. Suddenly, the head servant Rickle bursts into the room in a complete panic and announces that a massive B-rank monster called a murder gulch is heading straight for the city. He explains that it will reach the south gate in less than 2 hours. The Baron looks worried because his Knight Commander Xenoff is away on a monster hunt and will not be back for 2 days. He quickly orders Rickle to contact the Adventurers Guild to protect the city and evacuate the citizens. Alan immediately steps up and declares that he will help stave off the monster. Cecil tries to stop him, reminding him that he is her manservant and cannot just abandon his post. Alan calmly replies that he is also the Granville family huntsman and it is his duty to protect the area. He he rushes out and checks the local bounty board, noting that the murder gulch has a massive bounty of 200 gold coins. He realizes that the regular adventurers in the town have absolutely no chance of defeating it. However, Alan faces a major problem because he spent all his magic power earlier that morning farming skill experience points and currently has 0 MP. He runs to the main city gate just as a massive crowd of panicked citizens and wagons rush inside for safety. The guards desperately try to usher everyone in before the monster arrives. Suddenly, the giant blue fur-covered beast appears outside the gates, laughing maniacally and eating a small animal. A man begs the guards to wait because his wife and daughter are still stuck in a carriage outside. Alan sees the massive monster and decides to act. With no magic power to rely on, he picks up a heavy object and throws it directly at the beast's bleeding eye. He shouts insults at the monster, successfully grabbing its attention. The beast turns its focus entirely on Alan, so he immediately turns around and sprints away from the city, planning to lure it toward the White Dragon Mountains. The guards watch in shock as the young boy acts as bait to save the townsfolk. Alan runs frantically through the snowy forest with the giant monster hot on his heels. The beast easily smashes through trees and rocks, eventually catching up and slamming its massive fist into the ground near Alan. The impact sends Alan flying, but he manages to survive the hit. He checks his status and is relieved to see that his magic power has finally recovered to full capacity. He immediately opens his magical book and deletes his lower tier summons to make room. He creates dozens of mechanical butterfly summons and sends them to attack the monster. He dumps all his buffs into agility and endurance, hoping to put the beast to sleep with the butterfly's special powder. The glowing butterflies swarm the monster's head and release their sleep powder, but the giant beast just laughs it off. Alan realizes that the monster either has high resistance or his debuffs are simply not strong enough to affect a B-rank threat. He quickly summons more creatures to distract it, but nothing seems to work. The monster relentlessly chases him through the dark forest as the sun sets. After several close calls and using up a bunch of his magic stones, Alan finally manages to lose the monster in the dense woods. He sits exhausted against a tree, wearing his red cloak, and breathes a sigh of relief. He accepts that he is still not strong enough to defeat such a powerful freak without weakening at first, but he is glad he successfully led it far away from the city. 3 days later, an exhausted Alan finally trudges back to the city gates. The guards are stunned to see him alive. He completely collapses from exhaustion and ends up sleeping in bed for 2 straight days. When he finally wakes up, Cecil is sitting by his side crying and yelling at him for making her worry so much. Alan apologizes for the trouble. He is then called to the Baron's office to report the details of his harrowing journey. He admits that he could not beat the monster and just ran himself silly trying to lead it away. The Baron praises his courage and thanks him for keeping the city's casualties to a minimum during the knight's absence. As a reward, the Baron gives Alan 10 gold coins from the Granbell family and another 10 gold coins from the wealthy family riding in the carriage he saved. Alan is absolutely thrilled to receive 20 gold coins. He immediately goes to the weapon shop and buys a high-quality mithril sword for 25 gold coins. He heads out into the forest to test his new weapon, easily slicing through a giant insect monster. He's amazed by how sharp the blade is, but notes it still cannot pierce heavy armor. After his hunt, he decides to spend the day experimenting with his summon creatures. He summons a large hawk and sets up a test using a brown pouch, a pink spiked fruit, a green leaf wrapped package, and a brown nut. He hides one of the items inside the bag and asks the hawk to identify it. The hawk easily guesses correctly. Alan then unsummons the hawk, brings out a completely new one, and asks the same question. The new hawk also knows exactly what is inside the bag. To push the test further, Alan summons a different type of bird, a colorful pigeon, and asks it the same question. The pigeon has no idea what is in the bag. Alan deduces that summoned creatures can synchronize and update their knowledge, but only copies of the exact same creature type share this information network. He realizes that as long as he stays alive, his summons are essentially immortal beings that constantly learn and pass down their knowledge to new copies, giving them unlimited potential. By early March of the following year, Alan is now 9 years old. Cecil's older brother Mihai returns home and challenges Alan to another sparring match in the estate's courtyard. The entire family watches as Mihai completely dominates the duel, easily disarming Alan and sending his sword flying into the air. Alan is incredibly frustrated that he still cannot beat Mihai, despite grinding his level up to 28 and farming thousands of C-rank monsters. After the match, they all sit down for tea. Mihai compliments Alan's toughness, but Alan complains that he stands no chance against someone trained at the prestigious academy. Suddenly, Zenoff bursts into the room with urgent news for the Baron. He reports that adventurers have spotted the white dragon migrating away from their mountains and heading toward the rival Carnell fiefdom. The Baron is absolutely ecstatic. He explains that the dragon has blocked their access to the valuable mithril mines for a century, and its departure means great prosperity will finally return to their land. He immediately orders Zenoff to have the knights secure the mining sites. Zenoff agrees, but notes that they must first clear out all the dangerous high-ranked orc and goblin burrows located between the city and the mountains. Alan eagerly offers to help with the monster clearing, but Cecil's mother strictly forbids it, telling him to focus on his schoolwork and duties instead. Alan realizes this is a massive problem for his own progression. If the knights wipe out all the monsters in the area, he will lose his best spots for farming experience points. He knows he needs to come up with a plan to keep grinding without anyone noticing. He heads deep into the forest to test his newly unlocked abilities. He is thrilled to have finally reached level 5 in his summon, create, fuse, and enhance skills. He also unlocked a new skill called Share and increased his expansion inventory to 50 slots, giving him a massive stat boost. He decides to test the Share skill first. He summons his trusty hawk, Hawkins, and activates the skill. Suddenly, his left eye glows red and his vision splits. He can see his own perspective while simultaneously looking through the hawk's eyes from high up in the sky. He is amazed by the breathtaking aerial view of the forest and mountains. He realizes he can also hear what the hawk hears and control its movements perfectly, treating it just like playing a video game with multiple characters. Wanting to push his limits, he summons 3 more hawks and shares his vision with all of them at once. He is thrilled to easily manage 5 different points of view, including his own. He then summons a different creature, a saber-toothed beast, and tries to add it to his shared vision network. However, the moment he links with the 6th creature, he is hit with a blinding headache and collapses against a tree in intense pain. He quickly cancels the skill, realizing that his brain cannot handle sharing with that many summons at once. He wonders if the limit is tied to a specific stat, since the share skill itself does not have a level to upgrade. He assumes it must be connected to his intelligence stat. Knowing his current intelligence is over 1100, he calculates that he likely gains an extra share slot for every 200 intelligence points. To test this theory, he uses his Create skill to generate a bunch of new D-rank bird summons that specifically boost his intelligence. Once his stat crosses 1200, he activates Share again and successfully links with 6 creatures without any pain. Having cracked the system, he decides to summon all of his newly unlocked D-rank creatures to see what they can do. A giant gray bear, a massive blue spider, a gray owl, an armored fish, a golden knight, and a small potato-like plant creature appear in the forest clearing. He notes that almost all of them have high intelligence stats, meaning they can perfectly understand his complex commands. A brilliant idea strikes him. With his high intelligence allowing him to share vision and issue remote commands, he realizes he can hunt monsters using his summons without ever putting himself in danger. He spots a group of armored pillbug monsters nearby and initiates his plan. He orders the giant spider to use its sticky web attack, completely trapping one of the bugs. He then commands the giant bear to crush the trapped enemy, and it easily bites through the bug's shell. He tests his plant creature next, hoping its ability does something useful since it looks so weak. The potato creature sprouts a flower and activates a skill called Crop of Magic. Alan checks his status and is overjoyed to see that he just recovered a massive amount of magic power. He finally has a reliable way to restore his MP in the field. He then tests the armored fish, which uses a spray attack to apply an evasion buff to his entire squad. The team quickly wipes out the rest of the C-rank monsters in the area. Alan realizes that while they cannot kill enemies in one hit yet, the combination of debuffs, buffs, and raw attack power makes them an incredibly efficient hunting team. He then examines the new owl summon and deduces that it possesses night vision, making it the perfect nocturnal scout. He outlines his ultimate strategy. He will use the eagle to scout during the day, and the owl to scout at night. The fish will constantly buff the team's evasion, the spider will cripple targets with webs, and the bear will finish them off, all while the plant creature keeps his magic power topped up. By managing his intelligence buffs properly, he can eventually share his vision with up to 8 summons at once. He tells his squad to go out and hunt monsters continuously while strictly avoiding any human adventurers. With this remote-controlled setup, Alan can now farm experience points every single day of the month without ever leaving his room or drawing suspicion from the knights clearing the forest. He feels slightly monstrous for gaming the system so hard, but he is too excited about the infinite grinding potential to care. As he walks back home, he thinks about how the white dragon moving has changed everything for the fiefdom. He also remembers the gold coins he earned and decides he will regularly send money back to his family in the village to ensure they live comfortably. Meanwhile, his old friends Krina, Dagora, and Mash continue their own intense combat training in the village, completely unaware of the massive power Alan is secretly accumulating in the shadows.